Serious, what is your small town dark secret story? We had a crazy rich guy from the 1600-1700s who saw people robbing a grave one night, so decided that when he died he would be laid to rest in the roof of a barn behind his house. He believed he'd only be dead for 30 years, so requested that they lock the barn and put the key in his coffin so he could get out, but nobody could get in. He requested that whoever inherited his house, fortune and belongings would have to give them back to him when he resurrected. He did actually get his wish, but of course he was never resurrected. People stole his bones and his house is a dentist now. This is also the town where that lady went viral going ham in the alcohol aisle in Aldi a few weeks ago. I don't know if it's considered a dark secret, but in the county I lived in from ages 10-18, we had a soldier die under some extremely questionable circumstances. They said he was high drunk, experiencing mental distress, and raided a nursery, the plant kind. They claimed he was attacked by wasps and ran. He called 911 several times and claimed that someone was chasing him and was trying to kidnap him. In the last 911 call, he said everything was fine. Suddenly, just 14-15 minutes later, he was struck by a woman who stopped and called 911. He was ran over 2 more times and died. The autopsy showed no signs of bee or wasp stings. The connection to the nursery is due to the fact that it was just up the road from where he died. The place was ransacked, pizza eaten, money taken, but his wallet and phone were sitting on the counter, undisturbed. However, the family was not okay with that explanation, especially because he had previously texted that there were some problems with the local boys since the soldier wasn't from this part of the state. So the family had a private investigator look into it. They analyzed the 911 recordings and found several instances of other people talking in the background, though most of it couldn't be made out, except one. In the 911 call where he told the operator that everything was fine, a male voice could be heard saying "tell her." And the nursery? There was no DNA, no fingerprints, no footprints that led back to the soldier, even though his phone and wallet were there in the building. A lot of people, his family included, think he was killed by some of the local guys there after they got into a fight about something. They chased him down and caught him. He was able to run again after the final 911 call and was hit by a driver while trying to get help. And the police and the county covered the entire thing up because the boys involved were connected to the department somehow. Of the 3 drivers, none were charged for running over him. I think only the first driver stopped, but it was discovered that one of the other drivers was connected to the department either through family or friendship. It's a crazy story, but you can look it up. Just search Austin McGough. I wouldn't be too surprised since there is a lot of shady stuff happening in small town police departments, including covering up rapes that officers commit. I really hope his family gets him justice. Geez, Nexpo should do a vid on this. A freshman with Asperger's was being abused by his family at home. He was a problem child and got in trouble on purpose, but no one went too hard on him because of his home life. He was a well-loved kid at school and in the community. One day just before holiday break in December, he was really sick, but his mom sent him to school anyway. Locked him out of the house. He decided to try and get into one of the empty houses down the street, through the chimney. Now this kid was the size of a 2nd grader, but he was too big to fit through since chimneys taper down thinner. Mom never answered her phone when the school reported him missing. Went a whole day without reporting her kid missing. No one knew what happened to him. It was about a month and a half before we knew what happened to him. We all thought he ran away, was alive somewhere, maybe went to his sister's house. Nope. Dead in a chimney. The schools organized an entire week of counseling and such. They wore pink for a day and hangled vowed little pink ribbons on pins for him since his favorite color was pink. Everyone was hit really hard by it. That's how our small town started 2020. It hasn't gotten any better, as you can see. So weird that it's almost been a year now. This was around 15 years ago, but there was a sheriff's deputy that was seemingly a really cool guy. Friendly, cracked a lot of great jokes, etc. He was working at the local high school as a school resource officer and was apparently almost universally well regarded. Well, it turns out that he repeatedly raped a 14-year-old. He told the boy that he'd kill his parents if he reported the officer. I don't remember all the details, but I believe this went on 4 weeks or months before it was found out and the officer was arrested and eventually went to prison. Two sisters got picked up by a group of men. Both were raped and thrown off a bridge that is 45 minutes outside of town. One sister survived but later in life went back and jumped off the bridge. This is just sad. This is more comical than dark. A house burned down in this small town of 600 population, 1 block from the fire station. It being a volunteer fire department, nobody was at the station. They tried to get the pumper truck out, but one of the volunteers had run it into a brick building the week before and it was still at the shop. We're still undecided whether the house owner burned it down for the insurance. Strange that there was nothing valuable inside. A girl I went to high school with vanished one day. From day one everyone was telling the police that her ex-boyfriend had something to do with it. She already had a restraining order cause he held a knife to her throat and threatened to kidnap and kill her, but with no evidence they couldn't do anything. Over the years several people went to the police saying that he had admitted to killing her, but they did nothing. He eventually got in trouble for threatening to kill another girlfriend and choking her and went to prison for 3 years. After prison he came back to town and eventually asked another ex of his for a ride home from a party, and then she went missing after that night and they found her car burned and they arrested him again and he had burns on his hands. A few months later someone found a set of remains outside of town and during the recovery they found another set of much older remains. He killed them both and the failure of our local police department caused the second girl to be murdered. About 10 years ago a lot of homeless people disappeared, and when the police did the investigation they found out a guy was kidnapping and eating those people. Police found his hideout and found a half-eaten body and bones from another person. People don't like to talk about it but everyone knows what happened. There's a half-submerged submarine from the war in the bay where I live. You can walk out to it when the tide is out. In the late 80s somebody cut open the hatch. One of the only visible parts left sticking out the sand, climbed in and was having a look around. The tide came in and he drowned. If I remember rightly the whole hatch was filled with cement, then welded shut to stop it happening again. Oh, I have a doozy. Short version. Popular kids in high school run a secret towel fight club and accidentally kill one of their friends in the house of a local politician, who proceeds to bury the story. Towel fight club. Tape towels over your hands and beat each other up. It's supposed to be just boxing but it sounds like they got out of control and hardly could call it that. Similarly, the police chief's son built up enough speed in about 70 feet of a McDonald's parking lot to ram through the brick wall of a subway. No tickets were issued, no arrests, no drug or alcohol tests done, nothing. This was maybe 2006. This is a sad one to me. There was an older couple here who ran a halfway house for troubled kids who'd recently gotten out of juvie. They fostered a few as well. They were loved in the community. Wonderful people. One of them had an older brother who was a gangbanger in the nearest big city. During a visit, he snuck his 15-year-old younger bro a handgun. Younger bro ended up holding up a local gas station and killed 3 people. One of them was my friend's cousin. The foster parents lost whatever credentials they needed to do what they did. The kids went back into the system, and the giant house has been abandoned since around 2009. Saddens me that one awful occurrence ruined it for the many kids that could have been helped in the following years. I get why, I understand. It's just super sad. The town I was raised in wasn't exactly small, but here's the one dark secret I know. My hometown was where lots and lots of sports players had their mansions, and so of course, their wives and children were out and about in the community a lot. Every single sports player wife in that town is heavily addicted to opioids. Every single one. Opioid addiction is obviously an epidemic all over the country, but among the rich wives in the town, it had a 100% infection rate, so to speak. I know because one of my friend's mom was the hairdresser for basically every single one of those wives. I was homeless my senior year of HS, and one of the sports player wives heard about me from her, and she gifted me an iPhone. That phone was pennies to her, but I still wish I'd expressed my thanks more, because that wife died of an overdose not long after. Sorry if that wasn't much of a dark secret, but yeah. I hope you're in a better place now. Our local pizza place was a known KKK hub. Everyone knew it, and still to this day, if you Google town KKK the first thing that pops up is this pizza shop. They had some nasty butt pizza too. About 30 years ago, a local 8-year-old girl went missing during the annual carnival downtown. After a few days, they found a suspect that was seen near the girl right before she went missing. The guy confessed to her horrific murder and rape and torture. He was the kid's next door neighbor and friend to the kid's dad. I'll spare the details, but it was really bad. He was convicted and sentenced to 40 years or so. After 8 years, he was paroled and returned to the same house with his parents, right next door. Laws were a bit different then. To the family of the girl and former friend. About a week later, the man never showed up at his parole office. His parents filed a missing persons report. Rumor has it that several friends of the victim's father took care of him. If you talk to them, they just say that they are sure that he won't be back. The mayor of the town I live just outside of was murdered by his girlfriend a little while back. And there was a realtor that was using his company as a front for smuggling drugs. Other than that, it's the usual small southern town crap. That reminds me of another small town by me. A local doctor was operating a pill mill. He got caught, and his wife murdered him because she was afraid of getting caught up in the fallout. Yet, now she's in prison for life. About 40% of my hometown was homeless. No one had jobs. No one could afford any kind of housing situation. Neighbors paid for heat where they could on houses people were squatting in, and everyone invited everyone else over for dinner every night. We didn't know who was homeless. We just did it. We hired anyone and everyone for odd jobs. A lot of people just lived as they would when they were kids. Keep the fireplace going with trees you chopped down. Gathered water by the well and traded. Farmed and trapped for food. I went to school with a lot of homeless kids. We had, looking back, the most robust school breakfast program I've ever heard of. I thought it was normal for over half the school to show up until I moved to the city. You just gave people the dignity they deserved. No one was shamed if they dropped out at grade 10. We all knew that if they needed the job, they should take it. Looking back, I realize how wild it is. Our town was so poor, and no one was treated any different by me and mine, at least. Sure, there were some rich people, but they overwhelmingly went to the other school. And there were no panhandlers, no beggars, nothing like that. I was just told the Buseys were coming over for dinner. Did I like them? No, I kinda think they were dongs. But never did I make them feel uncomfortable. And most just ate, had some tea, and left. And if that doesn't tickle your fancy, a whale washed up on shore one week and all the guys in the local high school took turns having sex with it. All of them. The contrast between these two stories is so great, lol. When I was growing up, my small town had a spate of murders. About 6 in about as many months. This was in the 70s, nothing like it before or after. We have a vineyard hill next to our village. On that hill there's a big wooden cross. Lots of people go there to drink, have a walk, or with their dogs, but almost nobody knows why the cross is here. During war, a vineyard keeper lived there with his son. His son was recruited and the man was left alone. When war ended, his son survived and wanted to prank his dad by sneaking on him at night. But vineyard keeper saw him and thought he was a robber. So he grabbed his rifle and shot the robber. When he found out it was his son, it broke his heart. He dug a grave on top of the hill for his son and erected a big wooden cross next to the grave. When he was done, he laid next to his son and shot himself. From that day, no one worked on the vineyards and there's a big wooden cross on top of the hill. Now, you can't even recognize there's a grave. That is so sad. There are a lot of horrible stories here, but this one hit me hard. Look up the Gainesville Ripper. Killed a bunch of students and dismembered the bodies in really gross ways. This was about 30 years ago. I guess it's not really a secret if there are podcasts about it, but it's slowly being forgotten. As in the Powell murder, he forced her face down and stabbed her in the back, rupturing her heart. He then decapitated the body and posed her head on a shelf facing the corpse, adding to the shock of whoever discovered her. Well, that's too much Reddit for one day. As a teen in high school, the health teacher got caught sleeping with student. Everyone magically passed that year, including me who skipped almost every day, lol. Then a few years ago in another small town, 2 different scandals within the space of 5 years. First one, teachers at a preschool were dosing children with melatonin at nap time. Second one, a very well known and respected funeral home went under investigation for selling body parts. There was a woman who was cheating on her husband and got pregnant with him. When she has the child, it was quite clearly not the husband's child, so he kicked her out of the house. The woman broke down and went out drinking. Then when she was about to return to her husband, she picked her baby up, dropped it down a rubbish chute and left it there. The next morning she remembered what she did and went back to find the baby, but of course only people with access to the chute can go inside, so she had to wait hours, possibly days, for someone to unlock it and go inside. The baby was long dead by then. The woman killed herself shortly after. This developed into a ghost story later. People say you can hear the baby crying from inside the rubbish chute, and you can hear the woman crying on one of the stairways. Jesus. That poor child. I think I was senior in high school when this happened, but it was in our local paper every day for a long time. The details are hazy, but I'll do my best to recount them. 4 athletic male students had sexually assaulted a female sophomore student. One male had access to keys of the room it happened because his parent worked for the administration. They apparently picked her up to get food and then went to the school locker room. 2 of them pressured her to participate in an act she did not want to and thought she was in physical danger had she not done anything. The female student 100% went to court, and then they completely turned it around on her. That she asked for it, that it was her fault, etc. They said if she really did not want to comply, she would have fought harder or her clothes would have been torn or bloodied up. She just left that school and moved instead of staying. I don't believe much happened to the male students at all. As for the male students, no one had to register for anything. No one went to jail. Their futures were all intact. I think 2 had to do service hours and probation, but that was it. The new police chief's bachelor party was held at the local strip club. It was videoed when video was new. The cops broke in looking for the tape, which was also recorded. New chief lost the job within a month. We had a pedophile that got caught because he told his friend his plans to go kidnap a girl and rape her and not plan letting her live. This was a senior at our high school, so he was 18. And not to mention his collection of child pee. Not very smart man. Did he get jail? There were rumors that there was a secret passage from the village's churchyard to the coal cellar on our grounds, which were used by Jews to hide and flee from Nazis. Not sure that qualifies as dark. Well, it's dark because you know Nazis, but since it's a rumor it was probably never found, so I assume if it did exist it saved a lot of lives. Some dude that owned a froyo shop knocked one of his female employees unconscious, and she woke up inside this soundproof room in said yogurt shop bound up and wearing a diaper. She managed to escape and get the cops called. A bunch of teachers and administrators from my high school went to a conference over the summer. Apparently on the way there they came up with whatever happens at conference stays at conference. A bunch of them slept together, but I guess it got out of hand and some of the people that didn't want to participate in the crazy sex started to get harassed. One particularly good-looking female teacher that didn't want to participate had reported the harassment to the school principal. He did nothing about it. That night several male teachers and the school dean forced her into a hotel room and raped her. A lot of teachers and admins did not return to school in the fall. The teachers got off with the rape because it was her word against theirs. And they all claimed she consented. And then when the regret set in started to claim rape, it was really sad. She kept teaching but was a different person. She was always a very happy, energetic type teacher. After the rape all her joy was gone. Scumbags. Not the dark but yeah shady AF. Guy, blue collar, but running for a local political office, comes home to his wife of 7 years. Finds her being shagged by some guy. He whips out a gun and shoots the guy a few times. The man survives. Finds out that his wife was cheating on him and it wasn't rape. Here is where it gets dirty. So, the police want to press charges against him for attempted murder, since they say he knew his wife played around. So the DA comes to him and tells him to stop running for office and withdraw. He does and the charges go away. No crime here, folks. Does anyone remember a few years back when a bunch of people were dying of lung diseases caused by illegal THC vape cartridges? Well, turns out a guy I went to high school with was running one of the biggest THC cartridge operation in the Midwest, if not the entire country. His mom and brother were in on it too and had multiple locations where they were paying people to manufacture, pack and distribute the cartridges. 2 stories. A neighboring town had a young high school girl killed by a train. She was walking home from school and went across the railroad tracks. There was no warning indication as the indicators didn't trigger at the time. A malfunction was to blame. The girl was run over and cut right in half. There is a memorial still in place by the railroad tracks years later. There's also a man in our town that claims to run a disposal business. What ended up happening was when the townspeople paid this man for hauling out their garbage or unwanted materials, he dumped them around abandoned buildings, sides of the road and even behind a local mechanic shop. He was then quickly banned from posting about his business and he still tries to pull this stuff to this day. He's been banned on all the forms after this incident. Town in Africa I visited as part of a uni thing. Basically had a guy way back when who was running to clean up the area. Apparently there had been a lot of white murders. Some ritualistic thing where their ears were being cut off. And at the time, white voters had a lot more power than black voters there. Anyway, his campaign is he'll stop the white murders. And he gets elected on this hard on crime attitude. And suddenly, they stop. Everyone's super stoked. Until time goes by and they are not just reduced, but non-existent, overnight, with no real action or people brought to justice. Anyway, everyone starts investigating him. Eventually this spills over to a bunch of folks forming a bit of a mob and charging into his office to try find a ledger for paying off the gangland people. They don't find a ledger. They found an earbox. Got to hand it to him for making good on his campaign promise. Maybe not dark so much as wild. When I was in 1st grade, a guy called the police from multiple different phones saying there was a bomb in each of the schools in the town. 3 elementary, 1 middle, 1 high school, and all of the schools were evacuated. Turns out, while the entire police force was split up, he robbed a bank and got away with it. That's a strat. Not so much a secret, but the city where I grew up in Eastern MA became rather infamous thanks to the opioid epidemic. One of our T-Station's neighborhoods became a mimetic junkie central. That's how bad it was. There's also a number of bodies found here that have been attributed to Whitey Bulger and his gang. Found buried under bridges, along beaches, even one in a tuxedo found in a car, riddled with bullets, that was submerged in a quarry, and a torso stuffed in plastic found in a creek, where I took part in a yearly summer sailing kayaking program for kids, in the mid-90s. Our small town had something. Our China buffet would take the female employees from the restaurant across town to a massage parlor and forced into giving massages happy endings. Unfortunately, a lot of human trafficking happens under the guise of normal work. The school resources officer ended up sleeping with a senior at the high school. He was fired but they ended up staying together and now have 2 kids. The cop now works at Goodwill. They are happy. Similar story here. McDonald's manager in my town who was in his 50s had an affair with a high school senior in 2011. They ended up getting married a year later and have been together since. The weird part is he has a kid who's in the same class as his new wife. So the poor kid not only went through a rough divorce but now he has a stepmom that is the same age as he is. This event was so bad, Coatesville was removed from maps for a bit. I borrowed this from our Wikipedia page. In August 1911, steel worker Zachariah Walker was lynched in Coatesville. He had left his wife and children in Virginia while seeking better work. This African American man was accused of killing Deputy Constable Cole and Iron Policeman Edgar Rice, a popular figure in town. Walker claimed self-defense and was hospitalized after his arrest. He was dragged from the hospital and burned to death in front of a mob of hundreds in a field south of the city. 15 men and teenage boys were indicted, but all were acquitted at trials. The lynching was the last in Pennsylvania and is said to have left a permanent stain on the city's image. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.